Happy Thursday, everybody. That's right. We're doing a CoinGeek weekly live stream at 48 hours later than we usually do. But it's because we're doing something of a special. So if you're watching right now, please share across social media. Let the world know that we are going to have Richard Baker, the CEO of TAAL, as well as Nathan Cropper, hop on the show. We're going to talk about a little bit of what it means to be a block explorer and some of the services that TAAL is pushing out via whatsonchain. If you are a developer in the space and you're looking for a tool set to utilize blockchain data, you're going to want to watch this episode. In fact, if you're watching this on repeat, just keep repeating it over and over and over again. It would be awesome if this was the most watched video on our YouTube channel. But I want to thank our sponsors first. Our sponsor today is CryptoCraft.com. CryptoCraft is the #1 place to go check out market prices, which are not looking too sharp today. So be careful out there, everybody. But CryptoCraft.com has been very generous to sponsor our shows for many months now. So please check them out. Use the site, click their ads, use their forums, and do everything else that they're offering over there. So thank you, CryptoCraft. I also want to thank Alex Moon for taking time out of his very busy schedule to be the most delightful executive producer in the history of production. So go ahead and tip Alex Moon, retweet him a lot, make him feel like a king, because he certainly is. I also want to thank everybody for tuning in who is watching currently. So if you have questions, comments, blessings, cursings, gripes, or gropes for TAAL, myself, CoinGeek, or anything else, please put them in the troll box because we will be answering them live. Alex, I don't know if we have an ad today, but if we want to cut to the ad, we do have an ad. So in a moment or two.
Our historic records are part of the fabric of humanity and an instrumental element of stable society. Information accessibility is a key driver of human wealth and prosperity, and the BSV blockchain represents a great leap forward in how that information is recorded, managed, and shared. With ELAS, create private permissioned ledgers for your information. Modular, scalable technology for the next information age. ELAS. Gallop ahead.
Well, delightful. Thank you, Alex Moon, for consistently cutting me off with the ads in the middle of a sentence. It makes us all feel loved, and it makes us look professional. So that's delightful. Richard, Nathan, how you guys doing?
Really well, Kurt. Good to see you again. Thanks for having us on this week.
Likewise.
Thank you very much for having me. Doing really well.
For sure. So, Richard, you're the CEO of TAAL. I think people know who you are if they watch my show regularly, and many people do. They saw you on last month. But Nathan, you're new to the show, so let's hear what do you do? What's your role here?
Yeah, new to the show. I've been around in TAAL now for almost a year, working within the product team and working on our whatsonchain initiative. So been working with that for the past year, really working hard with the rest of the team, the developers, putting a lot of effort trying to make sure that we can provide a really sustainable and secure service to all of our users.
Brilliant. Love it. So we're going to start real basic. So for anybody that's real new to blockchain technology, we're going to start at the fundamentals. We're going to work our way toward the stuff that's for developers. So Richard, let's open it up quick and easy.
I can see the way this is going already. So I get to do the glitz and glamour, and Nathan will do the real hardcore detail.
Yes, I think that's probably the best for everyone involved.
No, cool. Yeah, I actually think obviously whatsonchain is the brand, but I think it's actually one of the low-key unsung hero products of our ecosystem, actually, Kurt. So I think this is a really great opportunity to get some coverage today and really talk about why do we need a block explorer, and what is a block explorer, and who's interested in using it, and actually what's its journey board. I think it's an interesting product to really talk about when you really think about the BSV blockchain as a utility and where this particular product fits in as that utility network grows. So I think many people in the blockchain space know what an explorer it is. It is ultimately a web browser in many forms, and what's on chain is one block explorer that exists on the planet. Most chains have got some form of a block explorer, and it is originally to do just that. It is as you ultimately form a data broadcast and you transmit that data to the blockchain, and that block is mined and formed, then over a period of time, you want a tool that allows you to go and discover that your transaction actually did get formed on the blockchain. What is its hash record? How do I look up the transaction ID? And, that's its original form, is to allow you to go and do the discovery role of making sure your transaction is resident on the blockchain that you broadcasted it to.
Sure.
But what's on chain is actually really quite an advanced and sophisticated tool, and it presents itself through a desktop client. It presents itself through the web browser, and as Nathan will explain, we have a series of APIs that you can access it to as well. And it's really rich in functionality. And I think the journey board, if I may, is from very simple discovery tool to go and have a look at a block on the chain. It is really evolving to become a search engine. And I think if we really project forward a few years, as we start to see more and more use cases move on to the blockchain, the BSV blockchain, this becomes a product that is really linked with how I do, a Google search. It's I go and undertake a decode of what I've hashed as a record and where I've put my data. Ultimately, I think we will see it start to federate other services so that I can start to look at maybe on-chain and off-chain data together. And so we'll come around some of these topics, but ultimately let's think about the Explorer ultimately being the search engine for the blockchain.
No, I think it's a really great analogy. I've been a Bitcoin guy for about 10 years. I've used a lot of block explorers, and it was always, I remember, 2017, it would be, you send a Bitcoin transaction and I would keep reloading my block explorer for sometimes hours. Like, oh my God, when is it going to get confirmed? So I think for a lot of people, that was their experience with an explorer. And we've seen lots of iterations too. I mean, there's been everyone from, blockchain.info and some of the old school ones floating out there, but they've become more robust, but I really don't think anybody's quite as robust as what's on chain. And I think that's actually implied in the name. I remember when what's on chain launched, and my immediate response was like, that's such a good name for a block explorer because of what we've been talking about in the space. Like at the time, this has got to be 2019, maybe even 2018, what's on chain early launching. And I remember thinking about like memo.sv, memo.cache client information, and like really thinking about writing valuable data to the chain and thinking like, oh man, like this is crucial. Like what a crucial tool. It's essentially the thing that made the internet useful was the search engine itself. And so, it's an interesting tool. I think it was wise of TAAL to make that acquisition. I'm curious. I know it was before your time, Richard, but do you know the thought process that went into that acquisition? Like whose decision was that? Who deserves the credit for the what's on chain acquisition? Because they probably deserve a medal.
Actually, to be fair, I don't know who made the decision. I could take a stab at it, but I won't. But I think, to be fair, all credit to the founders, really. Yeah. Simon, Liam, and Mo, who they're known as. And Nathan can expand, but those guys are geniuses. I think they've been a big part of this ecosystem for a very long time. Originally on the Node team and back at onchain, and ultimately very, very responsible for a lot of the infrastructure that we've come to take for granted, actually. And so those guys were the founders, and TAAL through various leadership steps had the insight to say, when we're building out an end-to-end system, whether that's starting with mining, but ultimately as we move towards a blockchain as a platform and as a payment system, as you really build out those service capabilities, that what's on chain product is going to become really, really fundamental to the discovery role of how you look at what's on the chain. But I think I want to bring Nathan in here as well, because before we go all the way towards, the role as a search engine and enabling discovery, it has another role, which is, it's an early interface. If you're very new to the blockchain, it's also demystifying, well, how do I broadcast some data? And so maybe, Nathan, do you want to jump in and maybe add a little color to some of its features and functions and how it gets used today?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really important to mention that it's not simply just a tool for developers. It's really a hybrid application, right? Because we're spending a lot of time to provide the tools, the infrastructure to allow developers to be able to display their data. So you have the opportunities to connect using our whatsonchain APIs for whatever type of application that it is that you are building. And then we are also creating a whole suite of tools that will allow you to either display that same blockchain information inside your application, or to provide some context around the data that you're writing to chain, and then to make that available to whoever is coming to whatsonchain to have a look. I remember my first time going to a block explorer and going through a very similar experience as yourself, Kurt, and trying to make sense of it all and still seeing lots of numbers going to other numbers. So, I mean, it's definitely an important task to take on to make sure that we can make it easy for everybody to understand. And we want developers to have their stuff seen, to be noticed. So that's a big area that we spend a lot of time on.
No, for sure. I think from a curation standpoint, like, how do you decide what data is relevant data? Like obviously there's a lot of block explorers that exist in the world, and I think they all sort of make a decision, like what is the UI, what is the UX, what are the decisions we make? Why do we want people to come to our explorer versus another? So I'm curious, what is the ethos that goes into why should someone go to whatsonchain? What do you want people to be experiencing there, and maybe now versus in 18 months or something like that?
Well, Nathan, can I cover the types of users I think that whatsonchain is applicable to, and then maybe you can cover the data side of things and what's there as a utility service. So I think firstly, maybe Kurt, probably a misconception that whatsonchain is certainly used by the miners on the BSV network. It is let's say it's a mark-to-market tool. It allows you to take a data feed. It's the Bloomberg or the Reuters terminal of the mining industry. And so you can effectively go there to say, okay, as blocks are forming on the BSV network, I can pick up the metadata on the API and plug it into my research terminal, into my analyst terminal. I can hook it up through the APIs to other services and applications that rely on knowing when the block was formed and what the hash record is and what the transaction ID is. So I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding at times that the user base for whatsonchain is very broad, and we'll touch on some of the volumes, is really, really huge volumes per day. Sure. But yeah, whether I'm a miner, an exchange, a wallet provider, an application builder, an analyst house, and increasingly, I think, market data terminals.
Sure.
All of these are end users for the product. When it comes to data type, I think I would say, Nathan, we're agnostic at the end of the day. We're a utility blockchain service provider, and whatsonchain is even more agnostic than TAAL. It is open to that discovery role, irrelevant of what the end user is broadcasting to the chain. So maybe you want to build on that in terms of how that works, really.
Yeah, it's really important to note that we're infrastructure, right? So we want the app developers, the people who are creating the cool products, whoever is looking to use the Bitcoin blockchain to then be able to display that. So when it comes to their data, whatever it is that they want to write, we want to make sure we have the right tools in place for you to then make that visible, make it available. So if you do want to have that ability for that market data to be made available, then we want to provide the tools to allow you to do so, right? I mean, we have to remember that it's 14 years since Bitcoin first came around, and
there,
we're still very much in a learning phase. We're still listening to our user base, right? They are still doing things which we never realized they were capable of doing, or what is ready, what's ready to be done right now. So one of the main aspects is that we want to make sure that we're responding as much as possible to the users. So, I mean, we have a very active Telegram group and Discord channel. And the Discord channel is growing every day. Our Telegram for What's on Chain is a little bit more popular. So definitely get inside there. If you have questions, if you have ideas about how to build something, really push the boundaries on this stuff, and we will definitely respond and make sure that our services are fit for everybody to be able to use.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about those services. What would be, if we were to start at like, your basic user services, let's just say I'm Kurt and I want to see if my Handcash penny got where it went. I mean, that's one use, but what would be the next level up, and how sophisticated of a user would you recommend go to What's on Chain versus maybe going to TAAL? Because I know there's a little bit of crossover on some of the services that you offer as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you're an exchange and you want to be able to display these regular account updates, then you have the ability to add or use the request APIs to get that information. And as we mentioned before, we've been spending a lot of time ensuring that the data that we're receiving is stable and it's reliable. I mean, that's a very important point there to add. I mean, we're not just taking data from the mining, from the mining nodes. We have independent nodes as well that we're pulling the data from. And, we've been spending some time developing this layered infrastructure to make sure that we're making sure the data is always going to be available, always going to be ready to be able to be served. And that's a huge area that we spent a lot of time on, just making sure that we can serve data. And then, stage 2, as we continue to move on, we're going to start looking at a little bit more of displaying that data, right? We want to be able to tell everybody about what the health is like on the BSV blockchain, which I think is going to be extremely powerful from that point of view. In terms of how easy it is to actually start integrating some of this stuff. So on the What's on Chain website, in the top left corner, you might come across a little tab called Tools. You expand that, you'll be able to see a whole suite of easy to use, some easier than others, depending on your skill level. But let's say the easiest one you could probably get into would be a widget tool. And within this widget tool, you're able to simply just copy and paste the code into your application, and then you're able to display real-time blockchain data in your application. I mean, it can't get any more simple.
Oh no, that's pretty cool. I didn't even realize that. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about removing friction, right? I mean, removing that one step to come to What's on Chain. I mean, we'd like you to come to What's on Chain, right? But we want to make sure that there's as much frictionless activity between the user, the developer, and their consumer, right? So again, building the tools for you to use. So all skill levels.
No, that's incredible. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of backboned off of block explorers, and I think for somebody watching who might not understand what a block explorer even actually is or does. So let's say you're running a Bitcoin full node, it is like, what is that? What does that mean? And especially in BSV, we sort of have this debate as to, I don't know, are you a node if you don't mine blocks? And so let's just say a fully validating endpoint on the network is itself sort of a private personal block explorer, right? And so what you're really doing is you're using the data that endpoint is receiving, and you're putting an interface on it. And so with that, you're essentially a copy of Bitcoin D, which is the full fat client. For anybody that doesn't know, you're basically a Bitcoin D for hire with a UI on the front of it. And so I think it's funny how many people like CoinDance, for example, is a site you see snapshots of it everywhere. Like, oh, here's the hash power differences between chains, and here's some of this other stuff. Do you think there's going to be a world? I mean, in the near term, let's not say in 20 years, where BSV has conquered the universe, but today it'd be nice if we could get like a consistent place where the data is all valid, because so many people have trouble running BSV's version of Bitcoin D, because if as soon as somebody mines a 4 gigabyte block, you see all of the sort of disconnected nodes kind of fall off the network. Is there a service, like, is this something that What's on Chain could be providing to various other interfaces and some of these things? Like, what does that look like? Is that something that is there outreach happening? Is there anything behind the curtain worth seeing there?
Yeah, well, I think maybe a high level. Firstly, I think as Nathan introduced, Kurt, there are totally independent nodes running behind what's on chain, and the purpose of that is it's got its own infrastructure, and it is real-time synchronized with the BSV blockchain. So when people are subscribing to the real-time APIs, effectively you are accessing the most updated nodes that what's on chain is running. And that in itself is a big statement in the fact that we have many people in building on BSV at the moment that do go to the trouble of running their own full node purely to try and stay synchronized to the data on the chain. And really, actually, the what's on chain APIs is a really good vehicle to do that without you having to have the overhead of running your own node, the hosting cost of doing that. And let's be honest, a lot of the issues we've seen for a lot of the application builders or the exchanges or wallet owners that have chosen to run full nodes is that they don't really allocate enough compute or storage resource or memory, and they can't keep up with the growth on the chain.
Right.
And so I would certainly today guide that there's little point running those full nodes yourself. You would be better off subscribing into the what's on chain APIs and pulling the data from there, because it is a real-time feed.
I think it would be good. I think it'd be good to also add that, to Richard's point, not every Explorer site who's connected to a node is even delivering the same level of API structure, right?
Sure.
You might find that when you're a developer and you're building something, you become bound without you realizing to an Explorer's structure for their APIs, right? So if something happens, something's changing, if they need to be able to pull, to the node, they need to change their services, then that can create an issue, because it means they have to go back and change all these lines of code. We'll have all these API calls. But then within what's on chain, we've made our API structure very similar, if not as close as what we can to the node. It's so similar, right? So we want you to be able to have your own node as well, right? But if you need to come back, then we want to keep that service nice and smooth also,
Yeah, and actually, Nathan, I'm going to pick up on some of the comments that are in the chat, and Mr. or Mrs. NFC, you are 100% correct. We shouldn't use the word node. I think terminology is becoming really important. If you're mining and forming blocks, you're running nodes, and that is the true purpose. But actually, if you're calling data, then we're really talking about proxy servers here.
Right.
And that we have architecturally still got challenges within the BSV ecosystem. There was a number of roadmap topics coming from Bitcoin Association and onchain this year around not well-named products either yet, but the BSV client, which ultimately is a proxy server,
right,
so that you don't have the burden of trying to run the node software. So I apologize. You're absolutely right to flag that. We really must do better in tidying up this language.
Yeah, no. Well, and that's a consistent problem. I think, in most other network environments, like any endpoint on the network that has a full data set would be called a node. But Bitcoin, because of its specialization, people think of hashing and the data services as separate things, and they're really not. They're two parts of the same system. And so, a Bitcoin node is defined in Section 5 of the white paper, and that's fine. But if the culture around it is like, well, that's been specialized out. Now it is a separate thing. Mining means hashing. And I always argue that, hashing and mining are not the same thing. Like hashers plus your data, like your ability to propagate that block is just as important as the ability to find the hash of the block. And together that we are, that's a miner. So, but I think it's going to continue to be a problem as things specialize out even more. I mean, we're not just static here. I think there's going to be specialty services around even the special data and other stuff. So,
yeah, I agree, Kurt. And as we know from the kind of Teranode story, and we won't drop into that today, but that is a very big architectural change. It's a microservices approach that will come next year, and that will containerize what's going on in our world. And it does give a great opportunity to start to bring specific APIs up from those container layers in how we run this Bitcoin digital cash system in its end-to-end vision.
Yeah.
But look, I think what you kicked off with there, by the way, just sorry, is we talked about some of the elements, which is, what's on chain is available through APIs and people can subscribe to the APIs to get the real-time feeds. But of course, you're using that to get transaction confirmations, to get validation. If you're building an app and you want that feeding real-time to your apps or to your services, that's an important layer to go through. Ultimately, I think where we're going to see what is in what's on chain now is also a very capable decode function. So I now want to decode, the data records I've put and use my private public key to decode. I think, again, this is a really important part of this service platform. And little by little, when we talk about the journey towards being a discovery or a search engine, it's how we build on these functions to allow it to be that. So what can I find out about what's on the blockchain? And maybe with this, Nathan, we could open up the concept around what's been built as the kind of plugin framework and how that relates to attracting data into what's on chain for discovery, but ultimately then a segue into how it might find its way onto the blockchain.
Yeah, definitely. Again, it's inside on the What's on Chain website, main website. You can go again into that top left tools. Definitely, I have to encourage everybody to go inside there. You might be quite surprised what you find. We are regularly making updates inside there. We don't always announce. We like to just kind of quietly release and allow people to find it and, foster some feedback. And so one of the interesting features that we have there is the plugins, managing your plugins. So it gives developers the opportunity to actually create a plugin. Maybe it's on some information on the blocks or in a transaction or some data transaction. We've already seen some users actually creating their own plugins as well. So somebody actually created a 3D model plugin, right? So maybe somebody wants to create an NFT, a 3D type NFT. And now users can come to What's on Chain and we'd be able to actually see that information. Again, why is this important? Well, you go to a marketplace, you buy something, you see that same thing on the blockchain, you can actually verify it right there. So again, it adds more value for developers. It's the whole reason of having the blockchain, that independent verification. So we want to help you to do that, essentially. The tools are there. And of course, we're a user, we're basing our What's on Chain on user feedback, right? Come and use it, try out the tools, tell us where it's not working, tell us what you do like. Let's see if we can build on it even more, But the plugins are very powerful.
No, absolutely. Who would be, I think a lot of people aren't sure who to talk to in some of these situations. And I know you have a Telegram help group, but is that a good place for people to go? Or what would be a good contact for people who want to maybe give a bug report or ask for a new feature or whatever else, or just hang out with the team and say, hey, can you show me how to use these tools? Like what does that process look like?
Definitely Telegram and also Discord. I mean, we're definitely pushing the Discord, trying to consolidate everything inside the one area. But we've had this historic channel within Telegram with many users on there, right? So it's also an opportunity to speak with other members of the community, because you never know if somebody's already experienced a challenge that you've already had. We're active in these channels, so you get to speak directly with, Mo or one of the other guys who are inside there, that's where I would definitely recommend people to go. It's a good place. You'll get to learn a lot. I mean, I certainly have.
For sure. Nathan, what exactly is your role? Are you in a technical role? Are you the help guy? What's your title over there?
Business analyst.
There you go. All right.
Yeah, business analyst. At the moment, I'm just Nathan Cropper. I thought that was good enough. You can see
Well, Cropper, I mean, we can do some etymology of names here. We got the baker, the cropper, and there's bonus money if anybody can figure out what a Wuckert is. So,
Are you in Star Wars? Oh no, Wookiee.
Unofficially, uncredited. I am behind a big woolly costume. So, what do you like? What are some next steps here? Like, what can we do to be utilizing What's on Chain or TAAL's services, like in ways that maybe people aren't thinking of? I know a lot of people used to rely on sort of a mix of things. They would upload with some unwriter tool. They'd be looking at their stuff with Beco.media, and there's a lot of these things. Like what are some ways that we can be consolidating behaviors and sort of putting things all in one place to make business processes better?
Yeah, well, I think high level, obviously, there's a big team committed behind what's on chain. So firstly, I would say, to what Nathan has expressed, which is features and feature requests and great ideas coming in on those channels are going to get attended to. There's a really capable sprint process running behind everything. And I'm sorry to be so formal, but actually the community and the users, the end users now shape this product. And so capturing that demand on a regular basis, Kurt, is I guess the first thing of any great product in the modern world. You don't build it just for the sake of building it. You build it because people really want those services. So use those channels and tell us what you're after. I think, when we introduced the concept of the plugins, that's the springboard into, opening it up to innovation. Mm-hmm. And so there's a marketplace concept there around. Let me put this in a different way for a second, which is if you look at the world of cloud computing and watch what Amazon and Google and Microsoft Azure have done, and I think AWS has probably pioneered this more, but you can go to AWS and on top of SQL, PrestoSQL in particular, they've built rich API connectors to connect to Tableau and Power BI and all kinds of machine learning and robotics tools. But one of the very fundamental principles there, it doesn't really matter whether you're using a column-oriented database or a graph database or a relational database, you federate your queries into your data lake from one common query layer. So I would build on that principle here and say what's on chain is that federated query layer. And if we start to get plugins that bring in different data sets into the what's on chain layer, it starts the process of saying, okay, what data sets ultimately would be best put onto the blockchain so they become fundamental as part of the transaction layer. And I think the opportunity for innovation here is enormous. And so opening this tool up and allowing it to be a data marketplace, a federated layer for queries, that's really where you start to power up this universal search capability. And I think that's our aspiration. I think that's where we hope this goes.
Sure. And it's such an interesting thing. Like, we've proven so much about what Bitcoin is capable of just in the last, increasingly over time, but just in the last couple of years, start to say like, oh, okay, you can mine bigger blocks, and okay, you can propagate bigger blocks. And now sort of moving on to okay, we've proven that we're 4,000 times more capable than BTC, which, still 4 gigabytes of data is not big data anywhere except in blockchain. So I'm curious, when you talk about like MySQL and some of these other things, like there's all these database structures that are, more efficient, by orders of magnitude with just simple data. But, what do you think of the people who say that like, there's just no reason to use proof of work and this expensive data storage concept of blockchain for data? Like what's your position on it, Richard? I know you come from a big data background and telecom and stuff. Like, what do you think of people who just don't get it? Do they need to get it? Or when will they get it? I guess. Like, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think that is on an ongoing basis a great question, Kurt. For me, I think the underlying proposition of the blockchain is that immutable data record keeping database. And linked to that is there is all kinds of data in the world, and you talk about this on a regular basis, that rely on that immutable trust record to be built so that the chain of events on top of that can be assured. And I personally think as we move towards, big transformation in financial markets going on, and there is huge demand around the world to look at how do we move trade flows onto blockchain technology. I can tell you from the regulator's viewpoint that there is concepts around trade repositories. How do we really know where risk is in a financial system? And record keeping is fundamental to that goal, to understanding where risk is and the transparent access to being able to measure that risk. Mm-hmm. Let's give another example, which is realistically a smart street light or an EV charging station in a smart city that is IoT connected is now a data producer. It is a content creator, and it should be writing its records to the blockchain so that value can be exchanged from that sensor for other value points up the food chain. And so there are some really compelling use cases for why blockchain is the right solution. So it's a gestation period. You know, we're opening up these markets, we're having these conversations. There's still a big education journey ahead, but I'm also quite excited. We're seeing huge applications already being developed in these fields. Our job is to go there and help get those translated onto the BSV chain.
No, for sure. Well, and I think that's a really important position to take, is that, you know, not all data needs to be on chain, including data that we use in the BSV ecosystem can be on centralized servers or use some sort of layer 2 or whatever. Like it doesn't have to be every granular thing, but being able to attest to the existence of the data using a hash, or to value the data, you know, instantly using it when appropriate is good. It's good to have the option. And as far as that option goes, you know, how much can somebody use what's on chain? I know you have some pricing tiers and models. I don't know them personally because I'm not currently a customer, but I'm curious, you know, if I'm a developer looking to build some kind of application, how much can I use the site before I need to start sending you money? Like what does that look like, and who do I talk to about that?
No, definitely. I mean, at the moment, you can get for free standard API key, 3 requests per second. So, and that's accessing all the API keys. I mean, it's pretty fair for everybody to at least get out there and start using, demonstrating, trying to build up an MVP, whatever it is that they want to do. If they require more, I mean, definitely at the moment, you can directly come to us within the whatsonchain channel, speak to us. Additionally, if you need something more substantial, then log into the TAAL console, sign up there, and then you can get an API key directly through that channel. But, you know, it really depends on the type of application that you want to build. I mean, sometimes we hear from some people that, you know, they want to get an API key with this many calls, this many requests. And it's, right, you know, what are you doing? You know, I'm trying to make a game of blackjack. And it's like, oh, well, you don't need 100,000 requests per second API call, you know.
But we might, yeah.
But I mean, maybe Nathan, we could touch base on some of the numbers from Q1 for what's on chain.
That's exactly what I was about to segue into, because it's quite interesting when you look at the numbers of calls that we're getting, and the sort of the amount of data which is being you know, transferred across that service as well. Throughout Q1 2022, we've had over 126 million API calls, which I think is quite substantial, to be honest, you know. And in terms of the number of requests, 158 million requests. So it shows that we're able to service quite hefty numbers of interactions. And, you know, we're pretty happy to do that. In terms of the number, in terms of the value, the size of data that's been transferred, over 30 terabytes of data. So, you know, considering how, you know, the sort of sizes that people are actually communicating or writing to the chain, and the sort of numbers that we're playing with, you know, we're barely touching the surface. I mean, you know, I'm sure we can do even more.
Yep, very good.
Oh, it's incredible. You know, and again, like these numbers are great, but then, you know, if I talk to people that are outside of blockchain, like people that work in cloud computing and stuff, you start talking about these numbers and they're like, why is that impressive? Why? So I think, you know, how do we start to bridge that gap? I always want to know what people's opinions are on like expressing these things out, especially as the blockchain becomes a microservices powered sort of entity. I think cloud and blockchain are going to get their lines blurred over the next 5 years. So I'd love to maybe for the sake of some fun sound bites in the future, even like what do we think these things will look like in 3 years, 5 years, whatever, like accessing APIs to get this data? Like how much data do you think how much data do you think that we can be pushing out to the economy via something like what's on chain API or TAAL's APIs before we start to need to re-architect those things?
Well, I hope, to be honest, Kurt, certainly for the TAAL technology team, you know, we should be evolving as we go here and never bump into that problem. certainly already we have you know, a cloud architecture behind some of the services that we run. You know, ASIC miners are in data centers that are just doing ASIC mining. The node software for running the blockchain nodes and the pools and everything runs in cloud computing already for TAAL. And as we, you know, see the next generation of the node software, and as we start to see particularly the components of UTXO and the payment channels and the rest of the architecture really open up, you know, I think that will be default a microservices containerized environment. And so we should have agility really from now forward, and we should be scaling that as we go. And I think linked to that, the only area that I see confusion about personally is, let's be honest, I think the blockchain is built for transaction data. Mm-hmm. The blockchain was never designed to be a payload data environment. And so we are going to have a hybrid situation where you're potentially running sharded databases that are cloud compute, but have the value of being linked to hash records that allow you to search for your indexed blockchain your blockchain provision data, but ultimately you are storing in a safe cloud compute database. I think we've got to be brave about these open statements, which is blockchain in itself was never going to be a big payload database. That's not what it's designed for.
Sure. No, it's good to hear you say that, because, you know, there's this conversation about like, should your NFT art be on chain? And I think in some cases, yes, it should be. You know, you're paying a lot of money for that item, that art or whatever. But like, you know, people uploading the same dog JPEG 50,000 times, maybe not the greatest you know, use of resources. But it's interesting because I think that as the data gets larger, I think there becomes more of an incentive to like you said, shard it out into various types of databases. And I think what's on chain will end up being a really good tool. Let's say in 20 years, you know, it'll be like going to the Library of Congress and saying, hey, you know what? I don't think anybody's checked this book out in 30 years, but do you have it? And I think doing that digitally is going to be a really cool thing to do with the technology.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that links to the baby steps we're all taking right now by having these plugins and beginning to think about a federated tool that allows you to plug in other data types. But ultimately, as that data moves more and more on chain, that the users are then used to experiencing that data there. So I think this is an iterative, agile process, of course. But my answer to you, which is I do not want to see us design ourselves into a cul-de-sac on technology. We have to be iteratively building this, and it is a hybrid environment now.
Absolutely. How do you think, you know, let's talk a little bit about the mining industry in general. I think we're very clearly amid a bear market. I think people weren't real sure about that until 2 or 3 weeks ago, but it's starting to look more clear. Like, how does Tom, he's disappearing.
I'm fading out now.
Unbelievable.
I need to get that controlled as well.
Yeah, no, we got the ghost of Richard Baker live on the CoinGeek Weekly live stream. Like, how did the economics play out? You know, like we talk about the coin price and some of these other things, and the rule in BSV has consistently been we don't talk about price, but there is an economic calculation where price really does matter. You know, mining a terabyte block full of $60 coins is cool because you make 60 grand, but if it was $1,000 coin, it'd be, you know, a few $1 million, 20 million. I don't know. It depends on how much you're charging per transaction. But how do you think the market treats this? Is the market mature enough? Like, are we? I always have this concern personally that like we're early, but are we too early? And if we're too early, how long can we hang on, and how quickly can we iterate to explain to people that, hey, all of this trillion X dollars in market cap is misallocated and really should be allocated our direction? I think that's a really difficult conversation to have. And I think some of the simple services, you know, like, hey, but you can do your NFTs on chain, your games on chain, your, you know, whatever, are really good ways to sort of simplify that conversation. But I'm curious, how do you look at it, you know, just over the next, let's say 2 to 3 year sort of bear and bull cycle? Like, how do we get ourselves to the point where people use the API services and things. And maybe BSV like outperforms this coming bear market. Is this something I feel like it might be our responsibility to figure it out, frankly?
Yeah. It's a complex one, Kurt, but I think it is layered. And of course, this is not really a good place to start when you're talking to investors of all sorts in the world. But
Sure.
Layered meaning, obviously, what you often hear from those that have decided to be inside the BSV journey and advocate that technology, that protocol, that token is the right one. Then we talk about it through the lens of, its utility form. And, we want to prove its long-term utility by driving adoption. And we're trying to drive adoption both at the protocol level, and that means getting it embedded in other industry standards like IPv6, but many more. That's just a topical one. But I think on top of that, we're building a network here, and the network is a transaction network. And obviously, Satoshi originally designed that transaction network to point at a digital cash system for the modern world. And I think we are all early here, Kurt. We're very early in the build cycle. But whilst we've got loads of great innovation, we're still only, I'm always hesitant to put a percentage on it, but we think we're 30% through what that digital cash system should look like and how it will function.
Sure.
Yep. Part of this then links to us all maturing our understanding to our private data and the value we equate to that data. And the minute I can have my private data in a wallet associated to a key, and I'm able to use my private public key to get an exchange of value for services that I will permission, that I care about, but I don't want them controlling my data. The layers here are multiple. And if we get our heads around how that utility builds up over time, you can really see how the coin price will grow. At the end of the day, at the fundamental level of mining, there will be more hash on the BSV network, the more that utility adoption happens. And the more hash that is attracted to the network directly equates, of course, to the coin price going. But we've got the factor in the middle for me is when we really liberate that digital cash system, which is a Satoshi micropayments economy, and devices are paying devices, and end users are paying end users who don't know each other through games, through metaverse applications, that this is quite a big journey board. And it's very, very hard for current investors in the world, whether they're, consumers or they're institutional. We've been kind of hoodwinked by a detour over the last few years. And that detour is hugely distracting. And, are we amidst the .com bubble bursting moment right now this year? We'll see. There's a lot going on in the BTC market, and we will be affected by that in the near term. But let's stay focused on the utility journey. It will win out.
Yeah,
I think it's probably good to mention that from the perspective of what's on chain, we're trying to not stifle any innovation in that aspect, right? That's why we spend a lot of time trying to build out that infrastructure, trying to build all those tools, so that it feels like we're really close, to have that real explosion of usage. And
right,
I mean, we're doing all this, iterative stress testing in the background, making sure that our services that we're providing can handle the load, and we're good. We're ready. We're ready for people to come on. We really want to be put. We want people to push with their ideas, and we want to take it to those levels. And so what's on chain, trying to create as much of a blank canvas as possible, so that we're not putting any bias on what we want you to create. We want you to create, and then tell us what you would like, right? So that's a huge aspect there for what's on chain.
No, I think that's crucial.
And Kurt, I saw it pop up on the comments channel, and I've avoided one of the reasons that we may have been here to talk about what's on chain, but to all the, to the mining community that do participate in the BSV SHA-256, and where they had a dependency on other block explorer feeds, part of this also is about educating that what's on chain is available to replace those that have struggled in the last couple of weeks. And I don't.
Yeah.
I hate getting into naming competitors and talking about challenges. We all have challenges in the technology business from time to time.
Yeah.
But we have a service. It's available. It's a really good fit. And I think from today's discussion, firstly, thank you for doing this. This has been brilliant to get a bit of a spotlight on what's on chain and the great work that Nathan and the team have been doing. But you know, we're at the start of a very big journey when it comes to the role of this search engine, this market data feed terminal. It's big. No,
for sure. And you know, I appreciate you know, you being respectful of the other players in the space. Like you know, that there are people that have struggled you know, to keep their node in sync in order to offer blockchain, you know, services and data services. And part of it is an economic calculation, you know, but like BSV is not a particularly profitable thing for a general purpose block explorer to be giving calls for. And so, you know, I get it. Like they don't have a big incentive to be paying thousands of dollars a month for servers to make sure that their BSV node stays up, you know, with great persistence. But yeah, no, it's at the same time, like I don't have any disrespect for anybody that builds anything. I still have good friends that work in Ethereum full time and think I'm crazy because I'm a BSV guy, but we still, you know, we still go out for a drink and we still share, you know, all the ways we could be helping each other if we just didn't have, you know, ego about it.
Well, this is it. Exactly. Well said on that, actually. Yeah, I was on a call yesterday with a team of Ethereum Solidity developers, and it's really quite cool to start to get these people engaged in what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And do we have so we're like 7.5 minutes or so before we're cutting out here. And actually, for anybody watching, we're going to bring on the Handcash people in a little bit. They have a little announcement to make, and we're going to do a Satoshi prize wheel. So my Thursday is nothing but live stream specials today. But do you have any closing thoughts? Anything you wished I asked or wanted to cover before we wrap up?
Well, I think, Nathan, do you want to cover anything on the product first before I maybe talk a little bit about it from the market point of view again?
I think I would just like to remind everybody to come onto the Telegram channel, visit our Discord. Any questions, reach out, contact sales at TAAL. Just get in touch. We want to speak about everything. You know, we're not a stranger.
Yeah, perfect. Well said. And yeah, all of those channels are there. So
here we go. Let's touch on it. We got a producer pushing the question. Richard, so TAAL mines BSV. I know you also mine BCH and BTC. This isn't a secret. Blockchains are public. So when TAAL has to pay their expenses and TAAL sells BSV, does this affect the BSV price?
But yeah, indirectly, of course it does. You know, market liquidity and liquidity in the market is a factor of who's selling and who's buying. And so, yeah, I think when I took over in January the 1st, we reviewed our treasury strategy, and that treasury strategy sees me, you know, increase our focus on holding our BSV. And so part of that is, you know, we do economically mine across BCH and BSV, and our treasury strategy is supported by we will always sell BCH first. And if we need to sell BSV for some reason, we will. But I am making the commitment that I want to be holding BSV to ultimately power a different future. And I think that future is we as a miner becoming a platform provider can be a liquidity provider to the Satoshi economy, to the micropayments market. I want to use that subcurrency to incentivize the future of application builders and putting transactions on the network. And so there's legitimate cause to say, yes, every now and again we have to mine and sell, but on the whole, we will be looking to hold on to BSV so that we can actually power up the micropayments market in the next few years. Well, that's good question. Thank you, Mo.
No, and it's an important answer. You know, a lot of people, I've seen a lot of criticism thrown at TAAL that, you know, they were supposed to have more BSV on their books than this. And, you know, I get that. And it's like, well, first of all, you know, running a business where all of your revenue is in coins means that any bills you have to pay need to be paid by that. So that's, you know, not a easy decision to make, but I think that's part of the interesting economics of mining all three chains. Even the fact that the three chains exist that are all using the same thing kind of throws off Bitcoin's economics in and of itself. So yeah, it's an interesting dilemma.
Yeah, and you know, and we're seeing it now this week with so many of the very big BTC miners who've always said they would only hodl, and unfortunately they're finding themselves selling high volume to ultimately support margin calls on equipment financing. And I'm pleased to say TAAL is not exposed that way. You know, we're in a good position where we didn't go to market to bring on equipment finance. And we're using our money to invest in great people like, you know, Nathan and Mo and Simon and the engineering team. We're quite unique in the fact that we've got a big software product group building the services, not just the mining. Yeah. And so, you look, it's running any business, as you know, Kurt, is a challenge, and you can't hide from the hard stuff, and you got to celebrate the good stuff.
No, indeed. Richard, it's always a pleasure. Nathan, it's finally a pleasure to meet you in a medium other than text. So you guys are great. You know, I'm a big supporter of TAAL, big supporter of What's on Chain. I've been a fan of What's on Chain since before TAAL existed, frankly. Yeah. So really cool stuff. I'm going to have to go tinker with the tools myself. So I encourage everybody out there, check out whatsonchain.com. Check out TAAL.com, see what's going on, follow the stuff, and check out the Telegram group, which I think we've pushed by on the ticker and stuff a few times here. But gentlemen, I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Kurt, a pleasure. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Very much, Kurt.
Absolutely. Take care, guys. So everybody, we got like 2.5 minutes here. Alex, maybe you can let me know in the private chat. Are we going to switch streams or something when we cut over to the Handcash guy? Okay, so they're just going to pop in at some point. So if Alex Agut is watching, and you know whoever else is going to pop on, there's been some really interesting news out in the space. So Handcash, they have been, well, first they were token negative, and then they've been token neutral, and then I noticed in their SDK probably 6 months ago or something, there was some run documentation, the ability to do run and nifty jig stuff over in the what do you call it, the Handcash Connect SDK, which was a pretty cool development in of itself. And then there was this announcement right before Dubai. I remember on my way out, I was literally going to fly out, and I see this announcement that, hey, Handcash is going to do instant USDC tokens. And then Alex posted and said, yeah, and BTC. And so a bunch of people are saying, wait, what? And then it was kind of a like, oh, I've said too much. Silly me. Like, slap my wrists. I'm going to have to, move on here. But there's been some really interesting hints going on. And then they made an announcement yesterday. So when we bring in Alex, we can go over those announcements and talk about who they've decided to work with, why this token protocol versus another, how have we solved the back to Genesis problem, and whatever else people like to talk about. But Alex, maybe we can, Alex Moon, that is, the delightful and lovely Mr. Moon. Maybe we can cut. Ooh, my microphone just like blew my eardrums out. Maybe we can cut to an ad or something. I'll take a little bit of a drink here and stretch my legs, and we can come back with Mr. Agut in 30 seconds or a minute or whenever he shows up.
Historic records are part of the fabric of humanity and an instrumental element of stable society. Information accessibility is a key driver of human wealth and prosperity, and the BSV blockchain represents a great leap forward in how that information is recorded, managed, and shared. With ELAS, create private permissioned ledgers for your information. Modular, scalable technology for the next information age. ELAS. Gallop ahead.
For a long time, blockchain's been seen as this sort of, cryptic, sort of, complicated, inaccessible, dark realm, which is a mixture of scary and daunting. And so we saw that this needs to be in the hands of people to improve IoT, to improve the internet.
All right, everybody. Alex, can you hear me? I have unplugged my microphone, so I can't hear my own monitor. So here's what we're going to do, everybody. The Handcash folks should be here in mere moments, but maybe somebody can tag Mr. Zatoshi, because we're going to do the Zatoshi prize wheel in the meantime. And what that means is I need to open up another tab, so bear with me. Nope, that's the Telegram chat. Here's Wheel of Names, everybody. Screen share. Is it going to let me? Super professional over here, everybody. Oh, come on, just let me do it. Realized I have a new computer, a new-ish computer, and have not allowed screen share. Uh-oh. It says I need to quit Chrome in order to enable the screen share, potentially. Let me try one more time here and see if we can make it happen. I think it might happen. We might make it happen. Chrome has permission. All right, come on. Yep, I think I may have to restart the browser. So, all right. BRB, everybody.
Our historic records are part of the fabric of humanity and an instrumental element of stable society. Information accessibility is a key driver of human wealth and prosperity, and the BSV blockchain represents a great leap forward in how that information is recorded, managed, and shared. With ELAS, create private permissioned ledgers for your information. Modular, scalable technology for the next information age. ELAS. Gallop ahead.
For a long time, blockchain's been seen as this sort of, cryptic, sort of, complicated, inaccessible, dark realm, which is a mixture of scary and daunting. And so we saw that this needs to be in the hands of people to improve IoT, to improve the internet.
Unbelievable. let me fix this. All right. I'm terrible. So everybody, you are watching maybe the worst episode of the CoinGeek Weekly live stream ever. All right. We got it. Okay. This is going to work, everybody. So, okay. A little bit of context here. Zatoshi, one of the greatest funders of the CoinGeek Weekly live stream. He used to give us paper wallets to give away all the time. He's been a huge promoter. He's been a good friend. He's been a good friend to everybody at CoinGeek and across the ecosystem. He does giveaways. He invents cool stuff. He's an artist. He's a heck of a nice guy. And even though he's British, I like to call him a friend. So we are going to do a prize wheel spin, and whoever it lands on, whatever number it lands on will be the amount of dividend or reward that is given away to holders of Zatoshi's new token, which I now forget which token ticker it is because he's been through a few ticker iterations. So I apologize again for having the best show in the universe. It is the STW token. I need that T. My voice is also starting to beat me up. So without any further ado, let's go for the spin. And we click. We are spinning, ladies and gentlemen. Spin, spin. can spin.
Move with the rhythm. Shake it up, stop when the clock hits 13. Sing 1, 2, 3,
Well
4.
done, Spin.
Guys,
So
guys,
it's
guys,
like a
no one can
buttery.
do it like we do it, like we do it,
What's
like
it gonna
we
be?
do it. 'Cause no one can do
It's gonna
it
be a
like
fiver.
we
It's gonna be
do
10.
it, like
It's gonna be.
we
It looks
do
like it
it,
could be
like
10.
we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it
5 or
like
10.
we
Might be a
do
10.
it.
I think it's a 10. There we go, everybody. It's a 10. Which is always nice on a Friday night. Am I right? So, all right, I'm gonna plug my headphones back in over here, and yeah, there we go. Headphones back in. So now I can hear myself, which makes it a little easier for me to turn on my radio broadcaster voice because I can hear how I sound. Are the Handcash guys going to show up, or what's going on? We got a big shrug out of Mr. Moon. Man, we could just do like, we can do songs from the '80s or something. Like, can we cut to a music video? Or we could just, Alex, you could pop on. We could talk about like highlights from our trip to Germany. We could do Trump impressions back and forth. So I don't know. Mr. Satoshi, thank you for everything you do. Thank you for your support of the show, your support of the network, and everything else. Yeah, it's fantastic. Where are you at, Mr. Agoot? Is it even going to be Alex Agoot, or are we getting like Brandon Bryant or somebody? We don't even know. All right. Well, I say we get. They've got about one more minute here, but to pop in the green room before I go get myself some tea because I am not feeling super broadcasty at the moment. And I'll be honest, the kids need to get back in the house and give the wife a little bit of relief here. Alex Moon says he has a short old clip, so maybe we cut to that. I drink a little bit of water, we refresh the whistle, and we give the Handcash guys 1 minute starting from right now to pop in. So Alex, play the clip.
No, absolutely. I got a question here from Scott Schroeder asking, what systems does Haste have in place to prevent bots from gaming the system? I remember this was the early question that everyone's like, well, I could just put a mask in the browser and reveal the dot early, basically, I think is
so yeah. So I
trick.
mean,
Yeah.
I'm not on the technical side of things per se. I know that right now what we're currently doing, obviously what's up right now is an alpha platform. And we have like the reCAPTCHA that was to prevent, our best attempt, at least in the early stages, from preventing any sort of cheating. We have had people who, people come up with strategies. There's one guy in the arcade who, I don't know if you've seen, at any point in the last month or so, but he basically owns every single leaderboard spot in one of the levels. And we look at the data, and to be honest, like we have two things. We have the reCAPTCHA, we have a manual process as well that will basically flag, times that are subhuman times. So things that we had to research and study, like what's the reaction time of a human being, visually to the finger tap, etc. So like we have factors in place that will flag certain times that are lower than what like I said, the subhuman time would be. That's not necessarily things that we're going to post on the site, like what that actual number is. Otherwise, I think that would give people a target to look at. Yep. But in essence, it's that. But when the beta platform goes ahead and launches, which will be at some point, it looks like mid to late September. So that's coming quite soon. There's a whole lot more security built into that. That's actually something that's being done, not hosted on, just a website building platform. That's being built by real developers. There's going to be checks. There's going to be certain things that when game developers submit their games to the arcade, it has to meet like certain vetting standards from their side and based on how they build it. So yeah, obviously, when there's money being played with, we do need to have that to have like a lot of security on that stuff.
No, for sure. It's funny. A buddy of mine, a guy that I got into BSV, was #1 on the leaderboard, and he tagged me on Facebook and was like, "Oh my God, I'm #1!" And then he's getting paid. He's getting the constant pings back. He's like, "Oh, this is incredible!" I was like, "Bro, like you should record a reaction video and send it." He's like, "Yeah, good." But he was like freaking out.
Well, so did he use your referral link?
That's that's a good question. I imagine he probably did, but
you could have been celebrating too then.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's the other genius part of your model is like there's two ways to win, and like you can be the guy that signs a lot of people up. And today you get paid in the HST token, which I think is cool. It's less cool, I think, than getting the constant pings on my Handcash. But I understand business development decisions.
Strictly for you, I know some people on the development team here. I told them maybe it would make sense to at least give the users the option based on some of your feedback. So we'll see. I don't want to give away too many secrets for what
Sure.
could be coming out in beta. But yeah, I think with what we have out right now, the alpha platform, that was all proof of concept. You're going to see a lot more features and things you can actually do with the HST as well. Like you're going to be able to redeem it, obviously, like you can right now from BSV. But, more short-term / long-term roadmap, there will be other things, it'll be like a prize board at any arcade. There hopefully will be cool products that are blockchain related that you can use it with. We've toyed with the idea of giving like HST tokens actual voting rights on, game developers submit a game, the people that hold the tokens, is this a game that should be allowed into the arcade, et cetera, that type of thing. So all things that we're considering. We want to continue to give as much value and utility to those tokens as possible, not just something that people are, speculating on.
Right. No, for sure.
Hey, everybody. All right. We're going to make this work. I told you, this is why we don't do specials. I'm only good for one show a week. And then, I run out of whatever drugs keep me rolling. So let's, I believe we have Mr. Brandon Bryant in the green room. Brandon, if I can get a thumbs up. Oh, okay. Hey, we're here. We're live. Brandon, what's shaking, man?
It's really quiet. I don't know if you can hear me.
No, you sound good. Can you hear me okay?
It's very quiet. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah. So we normally do sound check before these shows, but it's been a weird one today. You sound perfect to me. Preparations being made. This is like we need the little graphic of the dog that pulled the cord out of the wall and like the clown music. We're gonna make it, everybody. To the 56 people who have hung on, thank you. You are an impressive group of people. Yeah, maybe Alex, while we work through technical difficulties, play another clip, and when he can hear the clip, we'll be ready to go. So
that's right. Also, you can't really put the data on Ethereum. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. Here's another one from Bits Complicated. VXS is definitely an entry point or opportunity of helping to take back personal data. What does the future look like with these types of passes for other illnesses? I would actually like to add on to this. I can actually see dozens. Like if I were to sit and write them down, I could probably come up with 50 ways that you could use this in non-medical situations too, where like your identity is a thing that lets you participate in X, Y, or Z. But yeah, what are you? Do you have a roadmap that includes all kinds of other things, or what is your like 2-year plan here?
So for us, it's specifically on vaccinations. Generally speaking, vaccinations and there's an acronym that your audience probably won't know, so we'll just say, you recognize them as having been described as developing nations or disenfranchised nations, in places where they're not keeping records that can actually be accessed today, right? So they're either keeping them entirely on paper, or they're just not being kept in a way that can be proven later. And that kind of bleeds into other medical treatments where the verification of testing, and just broad strokes here, right? Let's take something that is a little less political. The one that I keep coming back to is Ebola, but I think the one that the market maybe relates to the most is AIDS, just because it's a little bit older. In certain places, when you're going through AIDS treatments in these countries that don't have the same medical systems that the Western world does, sometimes they have to get testing done twice in the same day because they move between facilities. And so that's not only human cost, that's hardware costs, that's product costs, that's all duplicated just because these two buildings can't trust the records that were being created between them. And so we can help to secure the efficiency of that process in ways that are far less political. And that's how I see this technology growing, right? Is COVID to me, and I express this to my team regularly. I think most of them feel the same way that I do. Some of them with epidemiological background or a little more concerned than I am about it. But for me, I personally believe that the first about $1 trillion that the Western world spent was on vaccines. And the next about $1 trillion that's already locked and loaded in the chamber, it's something that needs to be allocated at some point in the future, is going to be on treatment, and treatment that has a shelf life and does not need to be in cold storage. So, maybe 24 to 36 months from now is my trying to be reasonable about it. I'd like to say we're seeing stuff pop up now, so you might see a difference made in 12 to 14 months. We're going to be far less concerned about vaccines, because for people who get demonstrably sick or severely ill, they'll be able to take an off-the-shelf available treatment that you might find at your local CVS, Walgreens, Dwayne Reed, whatever.
All right, everybody. Thanks to Zach Weiner for popping in immediately to help us out, and Joe De Pinto. It's great to have them on standby. I shaved my head and we're back. So sorry, everybody. We're gonna bring in Brandon Bryant from Handcash and Curtis, who may want to remain semi-anonymous from Tokenized. Let me know, guys.
Hey, how's it going, Kurt?
Good. How are you?
Great, I can hear you now.
Excellent. Curtis, how about you? You good?
Yeah, I'm good. How you doing?
All right, good, man. Okay, everybody sounds good. Everybody can hear each other. This is a good thing. So let's go over the details. Handcash and Tokenized launch together, or at least announce together that the launch of various other fungible tokens will be available through the Handcash interface. Couple things. When? Why? Let's start with those two. First of all, when? Do we have a time frame?
Yeah, well, we're integrating right now. We're targeting by the end of the summer.
Okay.
But everything's going really well with the integration, so I wouldn't be surprised if we have at least some demo before then.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So then the why? What is the why other, why do we need USDC? Why do we need BTC? Am I going to get to, use my Shiba Inu on Handcash? What's the why?
Well, the why is because Handcash needs to burst out of the BSV bubble. And there's a great community in BSV and great users, but it's proven that not everyone wants to use BSV as a unit of account. But it's also true that you can send any token, any funds on BSV very cheaply and efficiently. So Handcash is just going to be the streaming money company. And whether it's BSV, USDC, or any other asset people want, we think we can use BSV as a competitive advantage towards like Venmo or other companies like that.
Sure. I mean, that's brilliant. I think Handcash probably has the best interface in the history of wallets, so congratulations. Now, I think the how, we should probably start with Curtis. This should probably be a little bit of a tokenized conversation to begin with. A little bit of backstory on tokenized, going back actually into the Bitcoin Cash days. If we get into like 2018, tokenized was like the token platform. This was going to be the big Bitcoin token thing, and then there was a chunk of time that was very, very quiet. And then all of a sudden, just the last like year or so, there's been like, hey, tokenized is pushing this out and that out. Hey, this is open source. And this is, all of a sudden tokenized is like coming back from behind and charging forward. And I think a Handcash announcement, first of all, is huge. But, I've had a couple private conversations with your CEO as well over at Tokenized. And I think you guys are up to some really cool stuff. And so I'm glad to hear that when things were quiet, you guys were working real hard and building stuff. So let's talk a little bit about the how. How is Handcash using Tokenized to integrate fungible tokens from other blockchains into the Handcash interface?
For me?
Yes, please.
Well, basically, we are closing up one little gap that we've got. Like currently, to use tokenized, you have to kind of scan the blockchain. Like you have to be able to see the responses that the smart contract agents respond to.
Yep.
And so right now I'm closing that up so that there will be a peer channel service where you'll be able to talk directly to the smart contract agent to get the responses back from it. So then, no scanning is necessary for it. And that'll basically allow like any wallets to be able to use it. And then
sounds like you're solving the back to Genesis problem.
Well, that was already technically solved. Like the scanning is kind of a different issue. Like
Sure.
you just have to make sure that it's fully, like it kind of makes it more fully peer-to-peer, you could say, where it's like you don't need a service or anything like that. You just have, I guess it still requires a third party because there's the two people that are transacting in the token, and then there's the issuer of the token that is, allowing that transaction or, facilitating it in the very least.
Sure. Can we talk a little bit about so I mean, let's say, and I granted this could change. I realize as you guys are working on implementation, but let's say I'm a Handcash user, but I want to be transacting in BTC. How do you envision this working? Like, what are the nuts and bolts going to be? Can I just send a pay to public key hash transaction? Can I send a SegWit transaction? Can I, there's a lot of ways to transact in something like BTC. Yeah. What does that look like?
So let's just talk about USDC because that's going to be the MVP.
Okay, sure.
We're going to build it around that use case. So you'll be able to deposit your USDC from another network, and then once the funds will be custodial, be held in Circle, and once we get confirmation, like it's how you send funds to like Coinbase or something like that.
Sure. Certain amount of confirms.
Yeah. Once that's confirmed, we'll get a notification from Circle, and then the USDC is going to show up in your Handcash wallet. And then you can go play Haste or whatever you want.
All right. That's cool. So you will have essentially a third party custodian, but whatever. I think so for BTC, Here's the way I picture it right off the top of my head. It seems like you could probably have a multi-party escrow system that does a similar thing with BTC, or do you need somebody to manually process like withdrawals and stuff too?
So there's some white glove services that will do that for other networks, or we could just build it ourselves.
Sure.
That's not like we haven't weighed out those options yet. But I mean, anything's on the table.
Okay, so why? I'm gonna embody Jack Lew for a minute. Why didn't you use Run, Brandon? Why did you decide to fracture the community a little bit more by going with tokenized?
So we chose tokenized because we had the use case of Haste specifically in mind.
Sure.
And the things that like Haste does like thousands and maybe tens of thousands of payments a day, and it's one person to 100. And so every token protocol we kind of looked at, we're like, how is this going to hold up to that? And so between Stas and Run, just the whole architecture of tokenized is really scalable and suitable for that particular use case.
Sure. No, so I'm actually a big fan of tokenized specifically for this use case. And the only thing that I can say about why I may or may not be a fan in other use cases is I haven't drilled into tokenized solutions for a bunch of other things, but I know tokenized does tons and tons of stuff. In fact, you guys for a long time had the best documentation on anything, especially as it pertains to like legal compliance and all of that stuff is really fantastic. So I think from a regulatory and security standpoint, moving over to tokenized should be the easiest for large institutions because it's like, oh, well, this is all already done here. But can we explain, maybe Curtis, maybe you can explain a little bit like, what is it like, why is tokenized so particularly good to do a tokenized solution like this? And I think, if I recall, the Dot wallet is also using tokenized for a similar tokenization process, if I recall. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Dot wallet, but basically, James did a lot of work early on. Before I was even on the team, James kind of had all the key features figured out. Like he knew like what was required to be a token, and for like all of these financial instruments, like basically you need to have some assets to back it, and you need an issuer, and then you need like a way to communicate all of those things and facilitate transactions and different types of actions on those tokens. And so he just focused on the key pieces, and then when I got on the team, we kind of stripped it all down at the technical level and made it so that it was super efficient and fast. And like a lot of other token protocols get caught up in trying to remove the issuer from the situation, or trying to, optimize for things that aren't important, when you just accept that you have to have an issuer and you have to have, all of these things to make a token work. Otherwise it's not really a token. It's like a digital, it's like a picture or something. It's not a token of a picture. It's, so because you got to have the asset to back it. Otherwise it's not, it's a different kind of token at the very least.
For sure.
And so we just said, well, the issuer has to be directly involved, and then we make an agent so that it's automated, so that everything just happens, and then we just codify all the terms that an issuer would want to do, because the different issuers will have different rules for how their tokens want to behave, and so we can just make the agent like perform all of those rules and checks and validation. And then you don't have to worry about, making the miners do any of that work or anybody else. You just have very small payloads that say, this is what happened. And then you have the users sign it that hold the tokens and want to do things with the tokens. And then you have the agent sign it that says, this was valid, this happened, I recorded this, I'm vouching for this transaction. And then it's just regular Bitcoin transactions with just a little bit of overhead, and then bouncing off the smart contract agent.
Right. And what is that overhead? Can we talk a little bit? I know how run tokens, they use a JavaScript bit in the op return, and then those JavaScript, micro apps communicate with each other. Does Tokenize do a similar thing, or how is Tokenize communicating the token aspect of the Bitcoin transaction?
We just use regular op returns, and but we do protobuf because I don't like JavaScript much especially for on chain, because it's ASCII, so it's at least 4 times as big as any binary format.
It's a good word for it. It's ASCII. I like that.
and yeah, so you can, if you're not doing ASCII, you can encode numbers very small, and you can encode any other type of data way smaller than any of that. So we just do protobuf and op returns, and then that just gets communicated.
I have a good comment on this too, because I implemented, like, Handcash is still going to support Run, and we have people using the Run SDK for NFTs.
Yep.
The biggest difference I found, Tokenize is super lightweight. When it comes to creating a tokenized transaction, you're really just sending a message, a request to the smart contract agent. Mm-hmm. And this cloud-based service is gonna either reject it or accept your request. So all of the heavy lifting is done on this smart contract agent, which can be way scalable than doing everything on the client. Whereas when you're creating a run token, you're kind of doing all the validation and loading the jigs all on the client side, and doing all that logic, and then posting to the blockchain. Whereas I could try to spend more tokenized tokens than I do have, but the smart contract agent's just going to reject it.
Sure.
So when it comes to integrating into Handcash, all I really got to know is the token outputs I have and where I want to send them, and just create a simple op return script, send to the smart contract agent. He's going to respond either yes or no, and then we update our UTXO set.
Sure. That's
and everything's basically authorized in the traditional Bitcoin way, where you have an unlocking script, and if you can unlock that script, then you are authorized to do whatever action you're requesting. So it's just like the user has an input that has a specific unlocking script, and they basically create the signature in there and send that to the smart contract agent, and the smart contract agent also has a locking script, and they create the unlocking script to verify that they're the actual smart contract agent. And so all the verification that the user has to do is say, is this signature valid from the smart contract agent? And if so, then you're good. You don't have to look. You don't care about the history or anything before that or after that.
Sure. Who runs the agent? Is this a thing? Is this like a separate service that maybe some of the mining nodes could be offering back to the network, or who is an ideal agent, and then who is maybe not the most ideal, but might also want to be an agent?
We have an open source version that you can run. It's we have also made some updates and some proprietary things on top of that that we run in our back end. So right now we have a really scalable architecture that can we can host millions of agents. And charge very little to host those for people. But you can anybody can technically run their own if they want to. They just have to they have to have a full node right now for the open source version.
Got it.
Whereas
Gorilla Pool should compete. Lower the price for Handcash.
I'm all about it, man. Is there an economic reason too? Like, is there a payment to an agent operator built in?
Yeah.
When you
SaaS.
when you create a contract, it says this is the number of Satoshis that you have to pay the agent whenever you do a transaction, and it can be a very small amount. Like right now, we just have it default to like 2,000 Satoshis, and we might even lower it just for a while. But so then every action that happens, the agent makes that money. So they don't even have to necessarily charge people to host, but you might charge for like administrative fees or something like that for people creating contracts.
Interesting.
Especially if they won't have a lot of activity on them or something like that. You still have to kind of keep it running.
I'm all about it. Root, if you're watching, man, download this and get this spun up. Let's be first, huh?
Yeah. I think the coolest thing is that you can create a private key on your computer and start interacting with this smart contract agent if you receive tokens. And so it's pretty open, and it's probably the easiest token protocol to implement, just like if you have your local wallet.
Sure. It's awesome. We got a question here from Brett C. Banfi, our biggest fan, greatest ally, and the man with the best haircut in BSV. But if anybody else wants to ask questions, please put them in the comment box. We'll give questions to Brandon and Curtis while we got them. Brett asking, can Curtis comment a little bit about the member of the technical staff for Tokenized who is a senior member of IBM, and what value does that person add to Tokenized development now and in the future?
Yeah, we have a guy that works for IBM mostly, but he does a little bit of part-time work for us. And he's just kind of trying to help us understand like the needs of like what IBM would have. And and he also has a good understanding of like financial like logs, like ledgers. So he can help us to clean up our ledger and process ledgers better. That's basically what Bitcoin is it's a ledger, but it's one certain layer of the ledger. And then there's technically, like multiple layers of ledgers depending on what you're doing with the ledger. And so he's helping us conceptualize all of that, and just we like to get our concepts clean, and then we can implement it and make sure everything works well.
No, that's smart. I like it. Especially for the clientele that you have the opportunity to work with, let's build this smart rather than having to reiterate the stuff that we did in the past and hope we don't break something. Question from bit's complicated. No, not a question, but letting everybody know they should like, subscribe, smash the bell, all the other stuff. He's also asking, are we talking about wrapped BTC? I think wrapping probably is the right term for it, but is that what we're talking about here, or is there something different going on?
Yeah, potentially. Like, we're going to measure market demand, and we're going to perfect the technology with USDC. Yeah. And then, we're going to see if we can go after the different tribes of crypto. Sure. And yeah, so the technology is the same. And that's the cool thing is like, once we have this, Like, I would love to see gold for that matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So-
Yeah. If I could be trading you in, silver for lattes, that's awesome.
Right.
Yeah, I think wrapped kind of implies that it's directly tied to the BTC, like the
Sure.
transaction somehow holds the key for the BTC. So
Yeah.
like I think BTC backed would be more accurate for what would probably happen, because
Sure.
technically you can have anything backed, or you can have a token backed by anything.
Yeah.
And you just have to have the issuer that collects that thing and says, ensures everybody that they have enough of that thing to back the tokens that they've given out to users.
No, for sure.
And you can do BTC or anything, and
Well,
yeah,
that's-
like I would also love gold, like something
Well, yeah.
truly stable like that you could
Yep.
exchange. You could exchange, milligrams of gold to buy things on chain, because there's no cost for it. You just have there's very little cost for it.
No, it's great. I mean, it really. I mean, this is actually the thing that made me think blockchain was cool back when I first heard about it in 2012. Is years earlier, like when I was in college, which I got out of college in 2006, I think. And like I was always like Austrian economics libertarian guy, and for me, I was like, what if we created like this system of databases that gave us the spot price of all global commodities, and then we could put commodities into some standardized measurement thing, so I could pay for groceries with, whatever, uranium or lead or whatever it was, but like essentially using a QR code system. And the problem was, who manages the database, right? And so when I first heard about Bitcoin, I was immediately like, like this is the thing, like this is the thing that makes it possible. But we've had a million people, well, not a million, we've had probably dozens of people try to implement like tokenized gold and tokenized other things, wrapped whatever. I think probably the most successful is probably wrapped BTC in DeFi applications. But no, I think it's incredible, and I would truly love to be able to make purchases with tokenized, milli gold tokens or whatever. Like I just think that is like so awesome. I could cheer, which is about how nerdy I am. So
Yeah. The cool thing is that we're solving the how, and the what becomes a business decision. But once we solve the how, then we're just a money streaming company. Like,
right.
We have this huge competitive advantage over every other money application out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so Alexander, I'm guessing Clip Peach is the right way to say this name, but he's saying, can you technically speaking have any fiat currency backed and used in a specific country or jurisdiction? I think that's the next obvious use case. I mean, you could have, it allows Handcash to be a central bank digital currency provider, and people could do dollars, euros, yen, rubles, whatever, right?
Once we kind of prove this concept and we have this wrapped, or whatever you want to call it, USDC, Circle is going to see it. Like, we're already partners with Circle for the fiat top ramps, so they're watching. And I think eventually they're just going to issue on the BSV blockchain, and they just launched a Euro token today, actually. So I think
I saw that,
yeah. So once we prove this protocol is working well and people are using it, I think the issuers are just going to want, the big issuers are just going to want to issue directly on chain.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, gentlemen. So I've been on the air for nearing 2 hours at this point. Do we have any closing thoughts? Anything you want to make sure people are clear on, or should we just wrap up and say thanks?
Yeah, one closing thought. So we spent maybe months, at least a couple months, analyzing every single token protocol for a stable coin, and we pretty much everyone on our team landed on tokenized as the best solution. Like, we even did initial implementations of STAS, and we just didn't think it was going to work for a stable coin. So I really hope the ecosystem kind of rallies around tokenized to kind of move everything forward.
Powerful endorsement.
And yeah, I guess I'll just go back to the point where you said we were quiet for a couple of years because we basically just we were aiming really big. So we didn't want to release, some small platform that, had limited functionality and that we would have to maintain side by side while we were building. We wanted to just build and just go full speed forward to build the biggest thing we possibly could, and then release it at that point. And, it's basically the quickest way to get there was the way that we did it. And so we've got a nice platform now. We've got, efficient smart contract agents, and
no one in the world has thought more about tokens than James Belding.
I think it's probably true. No, James is awesome. Like, he took a lot of heat for a long time because it seemed like tokenized was, hey, what happened, right? And then, there was a lot of success with run tokens and a number of things. But I'm actually of the opinion, and I have been for a long time, that there's room for probably 3. It's like the Pareto distribution, right? Where there's like, hey man, there's never going to be one thing that just conquers the entire universe, right? But there's probably going to be 3 to 5 really good iterations of things that cover what people actually need. And so I really do think that tokenized and the way that tokenized does things is the best way to do a fungible token on top of BSV, but also is probably the most scalable because it wasn't trying to solve problems that don't actually exist. I'm of the opinion that the back to Genesis problem literally doesn't exist. It's not actually a problem. So I can already feel my DMs lighting up at that statement. But it's everything is a practical business challenge, right? And so if there are people willing to solve problems practically, then it doesn't matter if they don't compute in theory. If it feels solved for 90% of global use, then like, hey, that's fine. You can go ahead and debate about the half a billion people that are still irritated about it, right?
Yeah.
So cool. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna wrap up and thank the audience. We've had a bunch of people stay for almost 2 hours, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, Alex Moon cutting everybody off. That's what he's best at. So I'm just playing, man. It's been a long show. All right, it's like, I don't know, midnight or something in the UK. So I'm gonna let him get some sleep. Everybody, I'm really grateful for you tuning in. I want to thank everybody from across the show. We got Richard, Nathan, Curtis, Brandon, as well as special guests Joe De Pinto and Zach Weiner, who just popped in at a moment's notice for everyone's sake, and then Alex for making this whole rodeo possible, and then Satoshi for sending along the prize wheel and everything he does with it. Sorry, I'm looking at my security camera. Everybody, it has been an absolute delight. I am Kurt Wuckert Jr., reminding you to tune in every Tuesday and every once in a while for specials for the CoinGeek Weekly live stream. Please like, subscribe, hit the alert bell so you know every time we go live at CoinGeek. And last but not least, as I close and as I clear my throat, remember everybody to be good to each other. Goodbye.
For a long time, blockchain's been seen as this sort of, cryptic sort of, complicated, inaccessible, dark realm, which is a mixture of scary and daunting. And so we saw that this needs to be in the hands of people to improve IoT, to improve the internet.
Our historic records are part of the fabric of humanity and an instrumental element of stable society. Information accessibility is a key driver of human wealth and prosperity, and the BSV blockchain represents a great leap forward in how that information is recorded, managed, and shared. With ELAS, create private permissioned ledgers for more information. Modular, scalable technology for the next information age. ELAS. Gallop ahead.